So welcome back, guys, to We Talk Boxing, and today I'm going to be talking about the fight which took place on a weekend between Fabio Wardley versus David Adeleye. So this was a very good contest between two very competitive boxers, young hopes who potentially could maybe go on and do something very good in the heavyweight scene. So right from the get-go, both of these guys pretty much went toe to toe in the middle of the ring. And it was a good shoot off, if you would like to call it that, where both guys obviously said quite a lot in the pre-fight interviews and press conferences, etc. But they went head to head against each other, and it was a good fight whilst it lasted. I thought David Adelaide potentially could have did a little bit more, maybe in the earlier rounds, maybe try and put Fabio Wardley off his game. But Fabio Wardley came back into the fight very, very good. You know what I mean? He used his jab very well. And this was the key. For me, it was the jab which put David Adelaide off. And it was pretty much a good stinging jab at times. And he was catching David Adelaide smack down the middle. And it was off putting. And you could see every time he was pretty much landing with that, then he would every now and again throw the right hand. And it caught David Adeleye and it just put him off his game slightly. But the knockout, the stoppage was sensational, came out of nowhere really. And from my point of view, I felt as if the stoppage was the right stoppage at that moment in time because David Adeleye wasn't anywhere in the fight and he wasn't winning those rounds and he was getting hurt. You could see it all over his face because pretty much every time he was getting caught, there was obviously a lot of bruising and he was taking a lot of punishment. And as I said, I thought it was the right stoppage. And because he's young as well, and there's a potential for him to maybe come back in the future and maybe have a rematch against Fabio Wardley, why take that much punishment or potentially seriously get hurt when in the future, if you improve, then you could always have that rematch. But yeah, right stoppage for me. And it's going to be interesting now to see where both of these guys go. Obviously, David Adeleye is currently signed with Frank Warren. I think he's got one more fight left on his contract, so it'll be interesting to see if that gets renewed. I think it will because regardless of this loss, he's still got a potential. He's young because a lot of these heavyweights that are around at the minute are all a lot older. The likes of Fury, Joshua, and Usyk, etc. Even Zhang and not Joyce. These guys are a lot older than David Adeleye. So when these guys pretty much hang up the gloves, there's going to be a potential there for David Adeleye to maybe compete or potentially win a world title. So yeah, right stoppage. And it'd be just interesting to see how he comes back because if he's takes the right fights, and I don't mean fighting a lot of these Eastern Europeans who are pretty much a knockover jobs. And he takes the right fights and builds his experience, his skills up a little bit more. Then I firmly believe we will see, you know what I mean, a future prospect in the heavyweight division. Um, and there's some good fights out there in the British heavyweight scene, some good domestic dust ups, and some of the fights that I'd like him to potentially maybe go up against, maybe over the next 12 months, 2 years, are some other tough prospects, such as like Johnny Fisher. You've got Jack Massey, who's in the heavyweight division scene as well. You've got Nathan Gorman, who we saw not fight against Fraser Clark not long ago. David Allen's still there as well. And then obviously you've got people like Moses Italma as well, who I don't feel as if I'd like to see Adeleye in there with him at the minute because, um, I'm not sure what happens in that fight. That's the only reason. Moses Italma looks very good. But there's some good, as I said, some good domestic dust ups there for him, and you never know. He can maybe entice someone like a Chisora into a fight, if Chisora's got anything left in the tank. But yeah, I firmly believe that there's a future there for David Adelaide, and it just wasn't his um, night, really. You know what I mean? He is a good boxer. He is a big, powerful puncher. He just couldn't get going. You could see that from round one. But anyhow, you've got um, Fabio Wardley on the other hand. Now, I believe that this guy is going to be putting a lot of pressure on a lot of the heavyweights at the higher end of the game. He's obviously ranked, according to BoxRec, the seventh best British boxer at the moment. And I would like him to pretty much try and take on the European champion, whoever that may be at this moment in time, try and win that belt, and keep climbing the rankings, and probably try and entice some of these older heavyweights or maybe fringe level world contenders or gatekeepers, such as like a Carlos Takan, which would be a brilliant fight, or maybe a Derek Chisora, because to have these guys on your record will be brilliant, and especially if you could beat them and keep climbing the rankings. Yeah, there's some brilliant fights because even though he's performing really well at the minute, Fabio Wardley, he needs more experience at the higher end of the game, and these guys certainly have that. And because there's some, obviously the top 10, top 15 heavyweight division is there's some good caliber of opposition, and obviously Fabio Wardley's ranked amongst some of these. But if you think of it, like if he can maybe take on some of these journeymen, get more experience, beat them, and you keep climbing the rankings, then he could potentially go off against someone like a Daniel Dubois, a Joe Joyce, maybe Anthony Joshua as well in the future. Yeah, so there's some big fights out there for Fabio, and I firmly believe that he's got what it takes to um, cause some trouble to some of these bigger and more experienced heavyweights. Um, is obviously his friend slash co-manager Dillian White. We don't know what's going on with him at the moment as well, because obviously he tested positive just before the AJ fight as well. So yeah, there is a potential there for Fabio again, as I said, to contend and maybe even capture a version of the heavyweight title at some point. He's not as young as what David Adeleye is, but he is still young compared to, like, considering the heavyweight ages these days. He's only 28. And a lot of, as I said earlier, a lot of these experienced, more top flight fledged heavyweights are going to retire at some point. And there's guys like Fabio who can maybe be up there and try and keep the British heavyweight scene going. But yeah, they're my thoughts. As I said, I felt it was the right stoppage on the night. Brilliant work from Fabio Wardley. He pretty much went out and said and done what he was going to do. Wasn't to be for David Adeleye, but there's still a future there for him. And I firmly believe if both these guys keep progressing in their career, at some point, maybe in the next 3 years, 2, 3 years, we could possibly see a Fabio Wardley maybe versus David Adeleye too. But you guys let me know your thoughts in regards to this fight on Saturday night. Do you feel like me it was the right stoppage, or do you feel that David Adeleye should have potentially been given a bit more time? Do you also feel that Fabio Wardley could potentially capture a version of the heavyweight title at some point? And what about David Adeleye? Do you guys feel that he could maybe one day be British or maybe even a world champion? Or do you feel that he's just not got the skills? Let me know your thoughts, guys. And as always, please subscribe and comment. Bless.